Everybody. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for returning for our final session of the day. I hope you're refreshed. We're into the last hour. And of course, that means it's time for our final keynote speaker of the afternoon. And that is His Excellency Professor Muhammadou M.O. He is the ambassador and permanent representative of the Gambia to the UN office at Geneva, the World Trade Organization, and other offices in Geneva. He's the current vice president of the United Nations Human Rights Council. He's also the chair for UNCTAD's Commission on Science and Technology Development's 25th session, and a member of the advisory board too. Now, Professor Khan is also one of 3 ambassadors designated as Friends of the Chair of the World Intellectual Property Organization General Assembly. He chaired the Africa Group of Ambassadors in Geneva from April to September in 2021. His keynote is called Africa's Reemergence, Taking Back Control. Please welcome to the stage His Excellency Professor Muhammadou M.O.
Good afternoon. I think I have the most difficult task to do the closing keynote address after the brilliant keynote addresses and panel discussions that we had today. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the African Society of Cambridge and the learning community as a whole, I thank you for your very warm welcome. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank the leadership of the African Society of Cambridge University, their team, and the many volunteers for a very brilliant job. I think they deserve a round of applause. I'm deeply honored to be with you here and feel quite privileged to address you on a very broad, provocative topic. I must say, and I think the deliberations from today have shed light of its importance and its timeliness. The weight of the term reemergence, I sometimes struggle to get my hands around it, but I will try to share some perspectives and some insights and perhaps to feel some aspects that may not have been addressed. And I will like to quote Mother Teresa. Thank you, sorry. It says, "I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters to create many ripples." Now, the theme of the conference, we can make many ripples that will converge for us to take control for the sustainable and progressive Africa's reemergence. Our collective ripples can put us to that path. I think we must first start by taking a moment to weight the term reemergence. It points to something that was once prominent that has become hidden from view or was pulled into the background, once again returning to the light of our collective consciousness. The natural question that follows is what exactly was hidden with regards to Africa. To attempt to answer that question, we can take a look at a prominent son of Africa, Cheikh Anta Diop of Senegal, a prominent Senegalese historian, anthropologist, physicist, and politician, who an active contributor to the restoration of the African consciousness, to dismantle the rhetoric spun by colonial campaigns and slavery. He pointed to the simple assertion that the source of intellectual thought boasted by the Western world was indeed planted, nurtured, and cultivated on African soil. Diop, although a contested figure, it's good to be a contested figure, that means you're saying something, opened an exciting dialogue, one that gave a generation redemptive faith and presented a poetic image of Africa's deep-rooted and intrinsic merit. We have seen through discoveries that have been and are continuously made that we have not been told the full story of our ancestors. Africa, where human life emerged and spread throughout the globe, the cradle of the civilizations, it was on African soil that mathematics, astronomy, the calendar, sciences in general, arts, agriculture, social organizations, medicine, architecture, etc., had their beginnings and existed in earnest. It is clear that the overblown and incredulous false narrative of the dark continent was far from the truth. What had been hidden with regards to Africa was the truth of ourselves, the knowledge that was, as African people and our respective civilizations, had a long and rich history before Europe ever decided to set its course in our direction. That our societies had vast and diverse contributions to the collective human consciousness. That we had a history of bringing things of immense value to the global table. In the insidious concealment and interruption of this truth, there was a loss of knowledge. Knowledge that could have been built upon and innovated. Knowledge that would have presented an opportunity to enrich ourselves and one another, and we are all the poorer for it. Hence the importance of your brilliantly chosen theme of reemergence. There is a weight that we must all come to recognize that is intrinsic in a reemergence, one that requires that we learn from and do not dispose or ignore our past and histories, but rather learn and build from them to inform our future steps, our sustainable reemergence, and to truly and confidently take back control. A return to ourselves and to all that is within us calls for a worthy and necessary reclamation of our narratives and abilities, bringing them to the light once more. Reminding ourselves and every onlooker that we have been here all along. And it is time to hear what we have to say and see what we have to offer. It is time to pay attention and actively listen and efficiently execute with discipline, integrity, responsibility, and a sense of purpose with a game-changing mindset to uplift our people, all of our peoples. The next question you might be asking is how? How does Africa take back control? I cannot assume that I have all the answers to that multi-layered questions, which quite a number of the panelists and keynote speakers brilliantly shared their very best thoughts. I will try to share some. I submit to all of you the significance of situating Africa's re-emergence and taking back control of the place of Africa's communal philosophy as essential for contributing to addressing modern global transboundary challenges and problems such as climate change adaptation, food security, and pandemics, and it's not the end of pandemics, and those of you who are scientists know that are incurable by global self-interest, if not the cause. The rising challenge of food security and energy crisis are spillover effects that are triggered by the Ukraine-Russia crisis, leading to disruptions of supply chains and imports, must not be ignored in our question for Africa's re-emergence and taking back control. Food security is crucial and important, and a trigger for many things that may equip us to be able to take control or our inability to take control. Food systems play a crucial role in providing food security and nutrition, providing livelihoods for the millions of Africans, mitigating economic shocks, and managing extreme climate events and the increasing environmental degradations. We need to have, as we rethink the re-emergence or to reset the re-emergence of Africa, policy innovations for food systems to transform our countries, to ensure the sustainability and resilience of food security, the need for embracing food systems as an approach for addressing food insecurity. I submit to you that complex challenges require complex solutions in some instances, with multi-sector strategies and stakeholders that go beyond one African country. Very important. Thus, a part of taking back control of the security of livelihoods, such as food security, we must return to our roots and values and take heed and embrace what was beautifully intimated this morning, which is Ubuntu. Taking control of feeding our people and ensuring sustainability, which was another important topic that one of the keynote speakers touched on, particularly on food security, is the biggest security risk and challenge for Africa's re-emergence, is a commitment to ensure that all Africans not only believe but commit that the right to food is one of the most fundamental human rights of mankind. Conflict and hunger are closely linked. When one escalates, the other is triggered. Taking control for Africa's emergence must solely include stepping up Africa's commitment to food systems transformation. Another point that is very important as we reflect and challenge ourselves on the re-emergence of Africa in the context of what I have just shared is the role of education, the role of quality education. Undoubtedly, education plays a significant role in liberating societies and is the foundation that will ensure that as we pursue re-emergence progressively, it is anchored and guided by freedom and democracy. I quote W.E.B. Du Bois, who reminded us of all the civil rights that the world has struggled for over 5,000 years. The right to learn effectively is undoubtedly the most fundamental. That's why you are all here. The right of an African youth to learn and have access to quality education, to equip them with all the skills and knowledge to succeed in their pursuits is a fundamental requirement to Africa's reemergence and to take back control. My humble story, is not uncommon, but one that nonetheless shows that the sheer transformation of the power of education. A young boy, the son of a farmer and an imam is a priest in the Muslim religion, who lived in a small village in a small country in West Africa called the Gambia, moved to the city for better opportunities to learn, and through a combination of hard work, the thirst for knowledge, and divine intervention, I found myself able to step into a vast new world where I was able to learn at institutions of high repute all over the world. That young boy grew into this man that is speaking to you today, served as professor across universities, served as vice chancellor, leadership positions in corporations, and of course, as you heard from the introduction, an ambassador to Switzerland and a permanent rep in international organizations, lending voice to multilateralism. All of this was possible to do so through the skills and insights gifted to me through the opportunity and access to quality education. To take back control, my point is, of our narrative and Africa to truly emerge, I truly believe we must start with the earnest pursuit of education, a quality, relevant, accessible education. We must become the guardians and purveyors of the rich and diverse repositories of our knowledge, indigenous knowledge, our known creativity and intellect. This starts at every level of learning. Schools and institutions should be spacious or spaces dedicated for free thought, the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake, and the exploration of curiosities. They should be devoted to the social good, and this is not done passively by importing information and education models, but by engaging with them, by encouraging our students and young learners to interrogate, to ask questions, to start discourses and debates, and contextualize their thinking to our histories and realities. By encouraging and facilitating this type of learning culture across the board, we, in turn, clear the way for the development of a generation of speculative and critical thinkers that will begin to usher in that type of leadership that will not be selfish and will be equipped with the mindset to really provide the requisite leadership for the gradual pathway towards the reemergence of Africa. The task at hand is huge to fix our education system. To help shepherd the reemergence, we need scholars like yourselves who care deeply about teaching. I just spoke to a young lady who is a teacher, and I was encouraging her to pursue a PhD, and she promised she will. And sharing their knowledge and a change of perceptions towards education as a whole. We need a new generation of academics to lead the future of Africa's brightest and shape urgently needed game-changing mindsets and ushering newest leadership that have the courage and conviction Africa desperately needs and required for the reemergence and taking control collectively that will uplift our peoples. restore hope, dignity, and equitable distribution and access to opportunities and wealth creation. Kofi Annan, the late Kofi Annan, reminded us that education is a human right with immense power to transform. On its foundation rests the cornerstone of freedom, democracy, sustainable human development. We must fix our education continuum and prepare our youth properly to enable them to be producers. Of course, nothing wrong being consumers, but more importantly, prepare them with a producing mindset using the emerging and advancement of technologies. We must also encourage foreign investments in the sector, education, through which we can acquire funds and expertise for the transfer of knowledge. Thus, the education programs across Africa qualify local labor to get involved in cutting-edge technology projects, particularly in the emerging interests and impact of cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, big data, data science. How will an African reemergence and taking back control facilitate intra-Africa collaborations and the co-creation and exchanging of technologies and funds for mutual benefits of African countries, and to ensure a certain independence from the North and an equitable collaboration and partnership? Leadership was much talked about throughout the conference today. Of course, for Africa's truly engaging in this reemergence, it cannot just stop there. It must extend to resource management and leadership. It is hard to imagine a re-emerged Africa where the populations of our respective countries and societies can live in hope and dignity when much of our leadership is plagued by corruption, greed, and conflict. That initial air of hope, optimism, and zeal for a new Africa, post-independence, where we are self-possessed and our future and destinies are our own to write, have long given way to an image much different. Coup d'etats, incompetent military rule, and once noble freedom fighters turn into gluttonous and self-serving politicians afflict our young African nations all too often. It is no secret that resources, natural and otherwise, that should be channeled and invested into our societies and populations to drive an emerging Africa forward are selflessly drained and rediverted elsewhere by accountability-dodging leaders who are robbing us our collective features. This drain directly burdens our communities with the social ills of insecurity, terrorism, youth unemployment, and a lack of real substantial opportunities for our people. We have survived and continue to survive this state with a steady and earnest sense of optimism and resiliency. An optimism that stems from alchemizing the good we manage to find into something great, and a keen desire to see and make it to the next day. However, in order to truly take back control, it must start at the top. Our leadership, or lack thereof, who we have been elected and entrusted with our tomorrow, must drive this reemergence. They must separate themselves from their individual interests and remember the responsibilities and profound set of duties and obligations they owe to our peoples. As Infosys, Narayan Murthy, the founder of Infosys in India, argues, he said, every nation, every company, or every community that has brought about a big change has had a visionary leader leading that change. Effective leadership must be an aspirational force reflective of the values and ideal qualities we seek to embody as a collective. Our leadership must evolve into an entity that is sensitive and responsive to the needs of Africa's people. Professionalism, punctuality, selflessness, self-discipline are critical components of governance whose examples should not be so far and few between on our dear continent. We cannot realize periodic interventions and aid to envision and build a re-emerged Africa. We must realize and develop the resources that are available to us and invest them back into the preparation of our peoples. Our leadership must take back control of our resources and recenter them on the building blocks of our societies. Vision and the identification of our fragilities are not enough. We need rigorous political control or coordination to implement and reset Africa re-emergence. I think the panel that we have in the morning with our sister from Zimbabwe beautifully situate that perspective. To occur sustainably, we must engage and reflect our resources and attention into healthcare, climate change adaptation, education, technology and digitalization, innovation and agriculture for positive change on a systemic and structural level, legal frameworks for development and a continued incentivized encouragement towards investment, both internal and exterior, for better infrastructure that is needed to happen at the government level now. There is a need in order to equip our nations across the continent with all the tools that are necessary and a trigger for our emergence. A very important point that we did not engage deeply this morning or this afternoon is the role of digital transformation to enable and accelerate Africa's re-emergence and to take control. We will not re-emerge, we will not take control if we do not adequately have the competences and the capacity and the leadership and the investment and the infrastructure to have the requisite digital infrastructure to enable all the processes of our government and put in an ecosystem that can harness the creativity, the capabilities, the ingenuity of Africa's diverse youth. Digitalization is propelled and is quite youthful, and our youths are ready, but our leadership is not, and they are far from it. Some key things that must happen to ensure that our youths, our women, can harness the opportunities that digital transformation usher in and create wealth. One is we must fix the digital divide and inclusivity in our countries as part of taking control. The other is we often talk about digital infrastructure, but more importantly, we must put in place a resilient, agile data and digital infrastructure. We must digitalize or embark on digitalization or digital transformation of government and social services to bring efficiency and deter corruption and encourage transparency and accountability and delivery of services, not only a certain segment of our societies, mostly in urban areas, but for it to bring broader access of quality services and intelligence to the rural communities and the most vulnerable. I must say also, in the digitalization, it is also important as we re-emerge Africa and take back control to ensure we usher in smarter policies and regulatory regimes with capabilities and expertise. That capabilities and expertise can be found across the globe. The African diaspora are quite capable and can usher in that is needed. Lastly, on digitalization, resource mobilization, sustainable and innovative financing, and a culture of excellence must be a factor as we take back control. To conclude, I came all the way here, so I want to share and add to this very important topic. I wish I have all the day, but I will attempt to conclude and try to pull it together. We have a collective obligation, all of us, to Africa's future, to Africa's reemergence, for us to take control. This demands that we develop an ownership mindset that empowers us all to take our place at the forefront of the required transformation processes that are needed for the reemergence that we've been talking about today. This mindset will help us organize ourselves in ways that enable us to fully engage in exploration across sectors and to be collected to its implementation by utilizing our very diverse expertise and experiences to become key actors and agents of change. Development programs for Africa by non-Africans will not be our saving grace. We must be the ones to design this reemergence and spearhead its manifestation with our context as integral to the development of nuances or nuanced solution to build Africa's emergence. At times it can appear to be a tall order and an impossible task as our populations face the prospects of escape presented by immigration and suffer under shaky economies. It would seem that the specter of heightened impediments to our progress mounts on itself daily, and the rest of the world threatens to leave us behind again. We must not throw our hands up in surrender and defeat. We must take ownership of what is truly ours. Each and every one of us is accountable for the future of our continent. Each and every one of us is accountable for the reemergence of our continent and taking back control. No one is going to do that for us. We must never underestimate the impact of our individual contributions to our future, just like the African society is doing, with a shared ownership mindset. The individual, each one of you become the collective, and the collective becomes our shared reality. Taking back control for Africa's reemergence will be accelerated with our collective resolve and commitment to empower women and scale up their substantive presence in decision-making and leadership equitably. Africa will not, and I repeat, Africa will not, and I repeat, Africa will not emerge and be in control of her destiny without equitable representation of our mothers, our women, our sisters in leadership across the governments, across governance of all sectors, across government and legislature. Undoubtedly, women and girls, when they have access to decision making, are properly placed and supported in leadership and resources for implementation, they are superior in the power as powerful agents of change, driving national and continent-wide ambitions in action with impact and value, and a commitment that will truly uplift livelihoods and not leaving anyone behind. They have that ingenuity and capability. We are no doubt already making strides in this area. A beautiful example that is making impact is what is happening in Rwanda in terms of placing women in significant leadership positions and decision making. We've seen that in Ethiopia. We've seen that in Ghana as good examples championing the right path. And we can instantly see the economic improvements and impacts resulting in their national economic. So change is important. As Obama reminds us, that change will not come if we wait for some other person, or if we wait for some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. That's what Obama has reminded us. I don't know how much time I have, Madam Moderator, but I will wrap up here. Another point that I wanted to touch on, which is you all, the call to return home. The call to return home. The call to return home after venturing into brilliant Cambridge, Oxford, and all these great institutions and this great United Kingdom is not an easy one to answer, especially when in so many ways that home seems or feel broken beyond repair. We must take time to acknowledge the fractures in our societies and in our respective countries. Recognize and not gloss over them with throwaway pleasantries and naive ambivalences, but to see them for what they are. But once we see these cracks, what then? We pack up, we muster courage, and we have the conviction, and we charge forward, not as individuals, but as collective. And you will be amazed the success and the satisfaction and the contentment that awaits you in beautiful, wonderful Africa, which its gratification is nowhere else. So go home. Sometimes we look upon these things in horror and dismay, chastises the indignation of their presence, but do we remain in this state? The memory of who we are as a people is all around us if you look closely. It is in the gait of our work, the harmony of our laughter, the beauty of how we recognize and see one another when we cross paths in this strange, cold, rainy land across the waters. It is so deeply imbued in all that we do. I believe that it is not lost, but simply a memory to be collected. Thus, it is time for Africa to reemerge. It is time for the world to pay attention again. I pray for the Almighty's guidance, mercy, and protection. I pray that the Almighty will give us the wisdom, the humility, and forthrightness to carry this heavy burden of championing and rolling out our sleeves towards ensuring a solid path and foundation for Africa's re-emergence and taking back control. I thank you. I thank you for the opportunity, and I hope we all collectively work and commit towards the re-emergence of Africa and to truly take back control, all of us, and I thank you.